Almost all of my endurance work happens on this very wall under my house, and today I'll tell you my secrets of how to get the most out of it. My plan today was to head out for a bit of a rock climb, but the Blue Mountains Summer 2022 is the one that keeps on providing rain. It's been non-stop, so I'm under the house and I'm going to get pumped down here instead. This is the boulder set up on the Stoked app. As you can see, it's got the numbers, which is really handy. It means that I can just come back to it and just go, oh sweet, yep, that's it. Because otherwise it's just this big like smattering of holds that just don't make any sense. So I'm going to run you through the whole session from warm up, setting my circuit, some tips around how to climb on your circuit the most effective way, and a little bit about resting and a few other bits in between. My warm-up's pretty standard no matter what climbing session I'm doing. I'm going to be doing some hanging, I'm going to be doing some chin-ups, I'm going to be doing some easier boulders that work their way up to being kind of that main set sort of thing. Also like to throw in a little bit of hangboarding and maybe a small campus just to see where the recruitment of my fingers are, because it means you're not going to pull onto the board just a little bit under-recruited and go just a little bit too far. So I'm through the crux of my warm-up now and I'm starting to feel really quite good. I'm going to do a few power boulders now just to get everything like really fired up, all my recruitment happening, and really tick into that like trying hard on the board. So I've got a few boulders from V9 to V11. I'll spend about 15 or 20 minutes doing this with resting in between. The idea is to not turn this into a power session, but just access that like bouldery try hard goodness. That was close. I've gotten a little bit excited, so I'm just going to have one or two goes on this project. Oh. Not to be today. Anyway, that's okay. Let's roll into the next part of the warm-up because I feel like this is kind of a crucial bit that a lot of people miss. So my circuit today is just 20 moves, which is on the shorter end. I'm going to break it up into a couple of sections and just do those sections as part of my warm-up. And then I'll do a full lap of the circuit just to get everything ready, get the blood pumping through my arms. Then I'll take a good 10-minute rest and we'll crack into the actual sets. The idea of that is basically to just really click into gear, get ready to go, and really to just get the blood pumping as well. If after doing that you really don't feel like all that blood's moving and you're feeling good, chuck in another lap, do something a little bit more. I'm feeling pretty good now though, so I'll take 10 minutes and then crack into the main sets. And in between each one, I'm going to let you know about the setting, the pacing, and a few other things to keep in mind as you're doing your sessions on a small board. Let's go, lap number one. So this boulder is actually a combination of two boulders that I've already got set on the board. So the start half is actually a V5 that I set, and then it varies a little bit as you come across the top and then come into the down climb. The second half, as you come over to the left-hand side, is actually a V8 that I set. Comes up and finishes with a slight variation. So it was a nice clean lap, set my timer for a rest. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel when you're setting your circuit. Just take some climbing that you're already familiar with, add a few transition moves to get from one to the other, and you're well and truly on your way. Something else I like to have in my circuits is kind of like easy climbing and a bit of hard climbing. This for me more closely represents actual outdoor climbing, where you get a section of sustained climbing and then there's a few moves where you get to kind of take a breath, relax and recover as you're moving across ground, and then you got to switch it on again and go for it, rather than just plodding through and doing 20 of the same level of moves. Feet as well is something that you can play around with to make the difficulty either easier or better. You can either have set feet or you can have open feet. Perhaps for one section of the climb you've got set feet and the rest of the time it's open. Have a little bit of a play around. On this one I've got set feet. I quite like that. It just adds an extra level of difficulty, a bit of concentration. This is an icing on the cake tip and certainly not a make or break. But if you can at all make the hard climbing up climbing, I feel like again this more closely represents outdoor climbing or competition climbing, whatever it is, not having a down climbing crux. This is just a personal preference thing for me, At the end of the day, pump is pump, and if you're doing any of it, it's going to be getting you much, much better. But I have set this so that the down climb is quite short, and when the pump's really set in right at the finish, I'm moving upwards. Lap 2. A big question that can often come up is, how hard do I make my circuit? I think somewhere around the consistent on-site level is a good place to start. The first lap wants to feel pretty cash. It's generally around lap 3 or 4 where I really start to need to work. And probably lap 5, lap 6, I'm not completing, but I'm giving it a fair effort. You may just need to sacrifice 1 or 2 sessions in working out the level. If you do end up with a circuit that's a touch too easy or a touch too hard, rather than scrapping the whole thing and starting again, what you can do is just swap out 1 or 2 holds or a small section. Let's say this pull just feels a little bit too hard and then I'm working really hard on this sloper. I could come up and grab something that's a little bit... That's my timer. It's alright, I've given myself some leeway. So I can come up and maybe I can grab this, which is a little bit easier. And then rather than doing some sketchy match here, maybe I could grab this and then a nice in-cut crimp and then go across to here. And suddenly I'm not working as hard. I didn't need to reset the whole thing and I've changed it by perhaps 1 grade. So something to keep in mind. I should pull on for lap number 3 now though. Let's go. The pacing that you climb with is another thing to consider. It's really easy to rote learn your circuit and then climb it like a rat up a drain pipe, and that's just not relevant to what you'd actually do outdoors. So this leans back a little bit towards what we were talking about recently, where I've got harder sections and easier sections. With your pacing, I like to have sections where I need to just switch on, execute, not muck around. When I come down for my little down climb, it's a nice time to take a breath, come through, relax, and try and get a little bit of active recovery happening before I launch off into the next sequence of big pulling and tight tension moves. A circuit set in this way I feel like is more representative of what you would get outdoors or in a competition. It's the same principle if you're doing a 40 move circuit or even more. You want to have sections where you're kind of traveling through and it's pretty okay, and then sections where it's an actual crux, you've got to try hard, you've got to work for it. If you have found the video useful so far, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up. Helps the video spread around to more people so we can share more knowledge, more love for climbing. Oh, it's really starting to kick in now. When I'm doing these 20 move circuits, I'm looking at resting for around 5 to 7 minutes. There's no enormous scientific reason for why I'm resting for that long. It just feels like long enough to have recovered a little bit, but not so long that I'm kind of twiddling my thumbs and getting lost in Instagram rabbit holes, which you probably shouldn't get on Instagram during your session anyway, because I've had rest periods blow out to about 20 minutes going down those. Anyway, just rest for long enough to give another solid effort. If I was doing a 40 move circuit, perhaps that rest period would go up to something closer to 10 minutes. On those longer 40 move circuits though, I will have a couple of rest points that I put throughout. You can see on this 20 move circuit, I'm not bringing a chalk bag, I'm not mucking around with any of that. It's basically just go, 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 go. But on the longer ones, I do like to take a chalk bag. I do like to have some planned stopping points. These stop and shakes, I don't think need to be any longer than about 30 seconds. If you need longer than that, then probably the difficulty isn't quite there, and you can have a muck around with making things a little bit easier for yourself. Another cool resting option is that you just have one good hand for your left hand perhaps. So your right hand gets a bit of a shake, a bit of a chalk, and then you got to motor through a few more moves before you get to a good right hand hold so you can shake out the left. This is kind of a little bit more representative of some stuff that you might find outdoors as well, and just a bit of a fun way to keep things interesting. At the end of the day with all of this stuff though, it's a bit of a choose your own adventure. If you're showing up and you're psyched, just go for it, jump on the board and have some fun, because you don't want to get stuck in a world of analysis paralysis. It's not fun. Way more fun screaming your guts out, getting pumped on the board. Got me that time. That feels like the best I've ever done on it. So I'll probably look to make a harder one now. I'll go through my catalogue of boulders and make something up. It's always quite fun having a little look around and thinking what it is that you're going to toil away on for the next month or so. Some nice big comfy shoes are a definite help if for your endurance session. But that's basically everything. Thank you so much for coming along. I really appreciate you all being here, and hopefully you learned something out of this. Hit me up with any of those questions and I'll do my best to get back to you. Apart from that, happy board endurancing.